Welcome, fellow druids, back to Full Circle, where we talk about Circle Orboros. Today I want to talk about how to do list pairings. This advice, in my opinion, applies generally, but it certainly will apply today. I'm going to use the current state of Warmachine as of early 2018 to talk about it, but I think the concepts here will be ones that you should always think about. So when I look at how to pair lists, the first thing you need to do is try your best to have a good understanding of what the tournament scene, either in your local area or in the national area or international, depending on where you plan to be playing, and look and see what that's going to be. Because there might be times where that will dictate some of what you need to prepare for or be concerned about. But the next thing is, what I like to do is look at that metagame, but also look at what you are comfortable playing, like stylistically, caster-wise, things like that. Look at what the current scenario packet is. So in this case, SEMO 2017, a very aggressive scenario packet. Look at what and look at many different lists. Don't get locked into, well, I saw these lists are doing well. So like for a while there, Una2 and Baldur 2 were hands down winning all these events, right? So you're like, well, that's what we play now. We're Circle. Don't do that. Don't feel like you can't play those things if they have obvious strengths, but don't feel like you need to, right? So like for me, I've tended to stray away from playing Baldur 2 because frankly, I find him a little bit boring. He plays a very brick. He's a very technical game, certainly, but and he definitely rewards good decision making throughout a game and like playing a good grind. But those are things that don't necessarily entice me as much. I like a lot of the movement shenanigans. I like a lot more interplay. I like those aspects of Circle a little bit more. I also like playing a little bit more infantry at times. I like spell slinging, stuff like that. Not to say Baldur doesn't cast spells or anything, but yeah. So when I'm looking at a list pair, that's one thing I keep in mind as well. The next thing is look at, like I said, what is being played and what you think is going to be played, and then see if there's massive holes, right? If you can't handle anything that's being played with your list, or you feel like you can't, you probably don't have the right list. You probably need to go back to the drawing board. However, start with a lot of people went into this thing with the advent of all the podcasts where we were trying to solve the puzzle through 100% list building. Now, in my opinion, you want to make sure you're not losing the game at list building. And to that extent, I recommend making sure that you pick a pair of lists that both can play into like 70 to 80% of the matchups that are out there in some regard, right? You can, and by play, I mean, you probably have at least a 50-50 and hopefully a little bit better. And then make sure that those two 80% overlap. You don't want to have both of them covering the same 80%. You want to make sure that you've covered 100% between your two lists, but hopefully removed as many list chicken scenarios as you are. But keep in mind that when you pair lists this way, that you're not going to necessarily have as many of those like windmill slam, I have this list, you have those lists, I've just beat you type situations. You're going to need to play the game. Excuse me. But I think that's important. I think that's how you should approach things. I think you want to bring lists that say like, I feel comfortable dropping this into most of the game. I feel comfortable dropping this into most of the game. If you do end up in a situation where you have divide and conquer, you're not going to feel so lost. And it's going to give you the ability to see like those nuanced times where maybe a list is better than you think in certain situations. So that's the next thing I would do, is make sure that you're not, I would not, the classic, a lot of people are like, well, find one list and then find another list that covers its weakness. And I think you want to do that, but I think you want to find one list that's good, and then you want to find a second list that's good, and you want that second list you want each of those two lists to cover each other's weaknesses, that if they're major. So that's the next step that I would look at. After that, personally, and I bring this up because right now a lot of people are thinking like, well, you just play two Bones of Orboros lists if you're playing Circle, because that's the best theme right now, because the Wolves are in the best place beast-wise and blah, blah, blah. And I would say don't do that. I would not play necessarily even a Bones and a Call of the Wild list for similar reasons. If you present two lists to your opponent that have a very similar solutions, you're also going to end up in another trouble, right? So Wolds and, you know, Geomancy Wolds and whatnot have certain things that play into them better. They have certain things that people are going to be looking to play. But if your other list has, so let's use a different pairing, right? So let's say we're talking about, I'm trying to pick a pairing I'm not playing. Let's say your list pair is Bradigus in the Wold theme and is Kruger 1 and Devourer's Host, right? You've just presented a very difficult problem for your opponent to have to deal with, right? Bradigus doesn't like guns, but his Wolds are kind of hard to kill, so I need damage, but if I bring all this single target damage, is it just going to get diffused by bringing all of these really hard to hit Thorn Ravagers that do enough work that I'm gonna have trouble on scenario or whatnot, or they're gonna kill all my infantry. Maybe I use infantry to kill Wolds, and now I've got to wait, is this infantry going to kill all my things, and stuff like that. So that's another pretty critical piece. I personally don't like. I saw a handful of lists at ATC, for example, that were like Kruger 2 Bones, Bradigus Bones as pairs. They may have done okay. I don't have all the stats memorized or anything, but personally for me, when I look at that, I'm like, well, I'm kind of playing into two very similar things, right? Kruger has telekinesis, Bradigus has synergy in his feet. They are doing different things. Kruger's better in scenario, Bradigus is going to crack more armor. And make sure if you do it this way that you have a plan. But personally looking at that, I'm like, okay, well, what deals with Wolds best, right? Or I know that, I don't need to bring my incorporeal models, my list with incorporeal in it, which that list would love to see. They may not do that anyways, Circle, but you get the point. There's these things that showing your hand too much with your list pair is going to hinder you and help them. And I think you want to approach it in the other way where it hinders them and helps you, right? Another thing is if you do play a list that is non-meta and you can play it really well, and by that I mean you need to get a decent number of reps in with it, and you can do well with that, I recommend that that's one of the lists that you include in your pair. Now, make sure that you're getting good reps with it and make sure that you know it is actually filling that, because if you go to a tournament and suddenly your concept is just not working, this is going to backfire. But otherwise, if you can play something that people aren't expecting, you're going to be ahead in the match, right? There's only so much place for people only have so much mental capacity to be remembering all these things. So if you know, well, I'm going to drop Grail into this Crix matchup, and they're going to be like, what does Grail do? And you're going to tell them as much as you can, but they're not really going to see it probably right away. And if you know that match beats Crix, you may just wipe the floor with them because they just weren't ready. Now, I mean, that's not going to stand up time over time locally, but it does mean now something, because that first step, right, I said, look at what's in the meta and make sure you can prepare for that. And if people are like, I got this meta, it's ready to go, and you're like, boom, Morvana won Secret Masters, and somebody's like, what does this do? And I'm like, and you're like, well, it pretty much recurs Druids the whole game, and my Shamblers end up having 1 million Shamblers, and I cast spells at you until all of your things are dead. And they're like, oh, we didn't really plan for that. So what if I debuff your Druids? And like, you can't do that. What if I throw fire at them? And like, you can't do that either. And they're like, oh, I guess do I just lose the game? And you're like, yeah, I hope so. So, I think those are a lot of the strengths to think about. So, I'm going to wrap this up a little bit, but list building, the TLDR here is look at the meta, understand it, and understand how you're approaching it. 2, look at what you're playing, the style you like to play, and make sure that your lists are things that you're going to enjoy playing, that you're going to do well at playing and fit. Because this is a game ultimately too. Those things are important. Next, try not to bring 2 lists that are very similar, but try to make sure that you have flexible lists that you can get 50% win rates with, or around 50 with, into at least 80% of the game, with each list overlapping that last 20-30%, 70-80%, and then 20-30. Make sure don't have a silver bullet and then a list you can play in everything, in my opinion. even if you end up playing one less like a Silver Bullet, I would say be comfortable in case of Divine Conquer, or just you lose List Chicken. And then finally, if you have a Dark Horse list that you are great with that does meet those other requirements, play that, because you're going to certainly get some, you're going to approach things differently in a way that you're more familiar with than your opponent probably. So anyways, thanks again for watching. Click the bell to subscribe to the show. Feel free to share this on social media, start any discussions around it that you want. If you have any ideas for shows you want to see, hit me up in any of the social media. I'd love to hear some new show topic ideas. And as always, thanks for watching.